the authors felt that it was important to bring to students' attention that American history had distinct periods. We broke it down into major eras. We felt that if we broke it up into those 6 or 7 constituent parts, that students would be able to see distinct historical eras, each characterized by a certain set of problems or issues, and that would reduce the 300 or 400 years of American history to a series of manageable bites. And we isolated 5 themes that ran through that period and were particularly important.
Things like images and maps and other visual material are absolutely central to the teaching of history. So reading a text, looking at a photograph, watching a video, analyzing a map, these are all ways that activate different parts of our brain and ask us to make connections among different ways of thinking about history. So the visual component of America's history is absolutely central to the narrative itself. I think in many textbooks, the visual features are sort of thought of as add-ons, but we really integrate the whole visual program in the narrative itself. There are discussions of the visual features in the narrative. The captions of maps and photographs speak directly to the kinds of issues that the narrative itself is discussing. So there's a real integration all the way across the textbook of the visual program.
I've really enjoyed working with the other authors. It's been a very, very creative process. James and I worked together on a new Part 4, which focuses on 3 wars of national expansion and consolidation. The Civil War, of course, still remains critically important, but we've placed the Civil War in the context of 2 other wars of national consolidation. The first of those is the War of Conquest against Native peoples, and the second is the Mexican War. And so we've really taken those 3 wars together and said, look, in 1844, the United States was this sort of modest assemblage of eastern states, and some of those states claimed the right to secede. They hadn't really completely agreed to be part of the nation. And by the time of Reconstruction, you have a continental nation that has secure power over the South and the West and is really poised to become a world industrial power.
Rebecca Edwards has written a wonderful Part 5 in the late 19th and early 20th century, in which she's used this concept of the long progressive era, a period of enormous reform, of activism, and of early state building. The state was still relatively small and not particularly influential, but it was growing in this period. What I try to do in my chapters is draw connections from that period forward, and to show the ways in which the conflicts over rights, for example, over social welfare liberalism in the New Deal period, really draws on a language of reform that had been developed earlier in the late 19th century and early 20th century in Rebecca's long progressive era. So I think the authors are very attentive to making those connections across the whole of the book.
I think really for me the challenge of history is to have people not only understand and use what they know and the place they come from. You really need to meet students where they come from, and then the challenge is to help them see things from a different point of view.
America's history attempts to deal with the history of the United States in an in-depth, serious manner. It provides complex yet accessible narrative that tells the story of American history in terms that the student can understand. It's important that they use their minds to understand the stories that we tell and understand the analysis that we present. But it is a serious attempt to come to grips with the reality of the nation's past.